And we also discussed about what are the plant diseases and how the plant diseases can be defined, and what is the importance of studying the plant diseases. Today we'll be a little bit talking about the importance of plant diseases. Why really we should really study about the plant diseases as such. So is it a really important thing for us to understand about the plant diseases? Because there are several reasons for that. One is what we are going to today talk about is about the importance of the plant diseases. Okay, I'm going to turn off the camera because of the connectivity. Why the importance is so important with respect to the plant diseases? As you know that humans, basically, if you see, they are dependent on 3 F's. One is the food, fiber, and the fodder. These are the 3 F's where the humans are dependent on. Food is, of course, everyone requires food, but also you need clothes, as in the form of a fiber. And you need a fodder because these are fed by the animals, and in turn, we get milk, meat, and so on. So all these 3 F's are affected by the plant pathogens. So once if you these are affected by the plant pathogens, so you are not available with the food, you are not available with the fiber, and with the fodder too. And apart from this, the plant diseases are known to reduce the quality and the quantity of the plant produce. There are several examples where I can say that the plant diseases are directly affecting the quantity because they are reducing the yield. The quality is also affected. For example, if you have a particular, if you want to, now the mango season is very much coming up, where you have a mango fruit and you have a lot of the patches or the lesions, which we call these as the spots or the lesions on the fruit. So thereby the quality is also affected. So one of the example is called as the wheat bunt disease. The wheat bunt disease, where it is going to directly affect the quality of the produce. So overall, what I can say is the plant diseases can reduce the quality and the quantity of the plant produce that is being produced. Because of which, when there is an reduced quantity or a reduced quality, it is going to increase the price of the product to the consumers. Let us assume that if your mangoes are severely affected by a disease called as an anthracnose, there is a very serious disease that is called as an anthracnose in mango, which is often causing the lesions or the patches, brown or black patches on the fruit. So the quality is affected, and obviously the produce is reduced, and for the good quality mangoes, the price is going to be increased. And also, this plant diseases also results in severe pathological effect. Severe pathological effects on humans, animals who feed on these, who feed on the plant produce, which are, what is exactly mean by a pathological effect? I can give you a best example is everyone likes to eat peanuts, right? That is your groundnut. especially when you are traveling in a train, or if you go to a movie, you would like to eat the groundnuts. So when you're eating a groundnut, you will get one or the other the groundnut seeds which are bitter in taste, which is because of your the aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is because of an aspergillus flavus infection to the groundnut, leading to the production of aflatoxin in the groundnut seeds, which normally leads to the bitter taste in the groundnut. So this is one pathological effect, I can say. And not only that, why I am calling this as a pathological effect, this is one of the examples. There are several examples like this. If the aflatoxin is fed, or if it is consumed by the humans or the animals at a larger quantity, the aflatoxin causes the carcinogenic effect. That is, you're causing your cancerous kind of the symptoms in many of the animals as well as in case of the humans. Okay. And the another effect of the plant disease, or the importance of a plant disease, this is where, I don't know whether you're going to accept this, that is destroying the beauty of your environment by damaging the plants. For example, I don't know how many of you have seen while walking through these from the Agriculture South Block College to the canteen, there are several plants. You can see that one is your Basavanapada, that is your, what is that called as Bahunia purpurea, where it is just like your the cow's foot, If you see clearly observe those plants, normally you will see that there are some white patches on that. White patches are a powdery-like appearance, which is due to a disease called as a powdery mildew disease. Okay, the powdery mildew disease, which is normally affecting this plant. And of course, when the plant is very severely affected, then it is so beautiful plant, but if it is affected, then it is going to destroy the beauty. Thereby, especially this happens in the forest and in the parks, wherever there are good plants that are growing. So there it is these diseases are going to destroy the beauty of those plants. And another importance of the plant diseases is the pesticides, or in general, it is a fungicide very commonly used, but also the other insecticides which are used to control the disease, as well as where it is going to pollute the water and the environment. So this is becoming one of the biggest challenge in the plant disease management, where the pesticides are inevitable that we have to use for the disease management or insect management, leading to the pollution in the water as well as in the environment. And no doubt, because of a plant disease, there is a reduced crop yields. This is a common, and the diseases are the most serious problems in the reduction of the yield in many of the crop plants. You take any crop, there is a disease. There is a number of diseases, I can say. There's not a one disease, there are a number of diseases. And because of the plant diseases, there is a financial loss. There is a financial losses. How the financial? No doubt that because of the reduction in the crop yields, there is a loss, no doubt about it. And apart from that, the money that is spent on the chemicals for the control is again the loss. Just imagine if there is no disease, of course, you need not spend at all. So the financial losses are directly seen. And Another importance that has been seen due to the plant diseases is the change in the agriculture pattern. Change in the agriculture pattern, which is like, for example, we say that in earlier days we used to grow a lot of millets or some kind of fruit plants, but now if you see, those plants are not available. Maybe one reason could be the market, but also there are examples where there are diseases which has changed the food habits or the agriculture pattern. I am going to take up some stories on that so that you will be more impressed to say that, yes, because of a plant disease, there was a change in the agriculture pattern. Okay. And another importance is the influence of the industries. How? Because if you see, many of the industries are dependent on agriculture. For example, cotton. All your textile industry are dependent on the cotton. If you can see, there are a good number of diseases which are going to affect the cotton plant. And if you see that, if, for example, in a particular year, if a cotton crop is affected by a particular disease, destroying the entire production, then your cotton industry or your textile industry itself is affected. Because there is no availability of your raw material or lack of raw materials. In the same way, we can take several other examples as such. And another importance historically we have seen is the plant diseases can change the food habits. The food habits of the humans. This is a very classical example. There are several examples to say that because of a plant disease, there has been a change in the pattern of the food habits itself, which I'm going to talk with a wonderful examples. Okay. Okay. These are all some of the importance of the plant diseases. Okay. If you continue with the same, why again it is so important? Annually, if you see all your, like, for example, the diseases, insects, weeds, all these are known to contribute to around 31 to 42%. 31 to 42%. Imagine 31 to 42% is a huge. If you look into the present, the food production, which is around 303 million tons in India, but if you see across the world, it is approximately around 9.5 billion tons. Just imagine if it is reduced by 40% of these, the population where it is growing at a faster rate, you need more and more of the food. It is estimated that the average loss, if you consider this as the range, the average loss is approximately, which is around 36.5%. This is the data of the 2016, where of which 14.1% is mainly due to diseases. Okay, and 10.2% is due to your insect pest, which is also a major serious problem, and 12.12% is the weeds. This is an estimate which is you can basically see in many of the books. If you take this as the 14.1%, it is estimated that around $220 billion. This in terms of dollars, $220 billion in terms of money. And recently, it could be much higher now. If you see, if it is much higher. So it is an economy of a particular country. $220 billion is a huge money. You can say that it's annual the budget of a particular country in some of them. And to this, whatever we are calling the 14.1%, 6 to 12% of the losses are going as post-harvest losses, which are inevitable, mainly during the storage, during the transportation, and during packing. So this is an added loss to your 14.1%. That is, addition to your 14.1% of the losses due to diseases, additionally, there is a 6 to 12% of the post-harvest losses in all cases, in food grains, fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are highly perishable and they are vulnerable for the post-harvest losses, including the post-harvest diseases. As I was mentioning, this is an statistics that you can just remember. There are many stories in the plant diseases. Many stories in the plant diseases. Of a large population in many countries, mainly in the poor countries, they are suffering from the malnutrition. Again, due to the diseases, I'm repeating, I'm not generalizing the statement. It is because of a disease. And also the hunger. Starvation. That is, the plant diseases has led to what we call it as a malnutrition, hunger, and the starvation. Many of them lost the jobs. Again, a very important, resulting in a destruction of the crop because of a disease again. Many of the people were forced to leave their countries, which is today you're evidencing or you are seeing. If you look into the Middle East people, Iraq, Syria, many of them are moving. That is because of a war. But if you take the history, people were forced to leave their countries, villages, were leading to the overcrowding in the towns or the cities. This is basically happened. Now we'll take on one typical example or a story, which is very much important with respect to the plant disease and the plant pathology. This is in 1800, the potato crop was introduced to Europe. This was the first time in 1800. From where it was introduced? It was introduced from South American region in somewhere between 1570 AD, where the potato crop, when the first time it was introduced, was in Ireland. It was first time introduced in the Ireland. So at that particular point of time, during the 1800s, so though it was released or introduced in 1570, the crop became more popular in 1800. But many of the people in Europe as well as in Ireland in general, the people were not ready to accept this particular crop. That is the potato crop. Why? Because the potato crop is new crop to Ireland and Europe. And another thing they had in their mind was the name of the potato crop was not mentioned in the Bible. That was because their people were Orthodox during that particular point of time. And another, the ignorance of not adopting this particular crop is the potato crop was grown underground, you know very well. So hence, people thought that it is an unclean food, which is an unclean food. And of course, now if you see wherever you go, you will find the potato chips in Europe or the potato French fries and so on. So, of course, this happened for some time. Slowly, people started to adopt. The potato cultivation spread rapidly as a result of producing, because the potato was producing more food per unit land area than your other crops, which were traditionally grown by these Europeans, that is the wheat and rye. So to summarize that, the wheat and rye was a very common crop which was grown by the European people, which was replaced by the potato, which had a capability to produce more edible food per unit land area. Okay, now people were realizing that, okay, potato is the most important crop. And they thought that since it is grown underground, it is protected from the pest and diseases. They were having that belief at that time. And remember another thing, at that particular point of time, the Irish people were very, very poor. If you look into any old movies of English movies, you will see that Irish people were extremely poor and they owned the land from the Britishers or from the English people. They rented the land from the English people and they were paying a lot of rent for those lands for where they were using for as an agriculture. So when they were growing the wheat and rye, they were unable to pay the rent, which was where they used to get less money per unit area. But with the potato production, they were getting more income and the potato crop was growing very well because of the cooler and wet climate condition in the Ireland. Thereby, the Irish farmers who were very poor, they were able to pay the rents to their landlords. Okay? So until 1845, all was going very smooth. That is from 1800 to 1845, everything was going very smooth. In 1845, in Ireland in specific, which was, as I mentioned, where the condition for the growing of potato was so favorable. And immediately during that particular point of time, the weather over Northern Europe and Ireland, Ireland. So the weather became a little bit uneven or changed a little bit as it became a cloudy weather and more cooler compared to the one which was there. And this condition extended for several weeks. So because of this, there was a kind of symptom that was seen on the leaves as the blights. Okay? There was an issue called as the blights on the leaf as well as on the potato tubers. And even on the shoots, leading to the death of the plants. So when the farmers started worrying about the losses because of this particular the blighting on the leaves and the stem, thereby when the losses started, the starvation also started. That is, people did not have even the food to eat. So here, some of the farmers, they thought that this was due to, earlier people used to think that whenever something happens to their crop or something, someone might have done some black magic, or some little people might have bought the devils themselves, whom they tried to kill and exorcise them. And some people started to sprinkle the holy water. Sprinkle, that is your tirtha, whatever you can, now what we call it as a tirtha. They used to sprinkle so that they felt that the disease can be suppressed or it can be removed. While there were several people at that point of time where your spontaneous generation theory was, that a theory was going on during that particular time. While some of the educated doctors at that time were so convinced with the truth of the theory of the spontaneous generation theory, by seeing the mildew growth, or what we call this as the fungal growth. Mildew is basically the fungal growth. The fungal growth on the affected leaves, stem, and the tubers, which they felt that the growth was on the drying plants. But there were some smart people who were also thinking, the second thought of some of the people like Dr. J. Lindley, who was a professor of botany in London. So he proposed a wrong statement or an incorrect statement, where he felt that because of increased rain, that is more amount of rain, the leaves might have absorbed more water. More water through roots, and the tissue became swollen and rotten. Which is, everyone know, it is now, because you're all very smart people, you think that it is a foolish statement. But during 1840s, it was, people were thinking in different ways, where there was no mention of a plant disease at all in any of their books or anywhere. They were very ignorant about the plant diseases. So later, another the scientist Miles Berkeley, who noted that there is a mold. So as someone also mentioned about, there is a moldy growth on potato plants. So there, the rot was a fungus. Then he decided that it is a fungal pathogen. First time just showing about a fungus was observed, similar to that of a disease which was seen as the sick onion, where Miles Berkeley was working on a sick onion. He proposed as the fungal, or a fungus, identical to the fungus. But however, Berkeley could not support his statement with an experimental data. So the puzzle of the potato blight, continued for 16 years. 16 years, that is almost from 1845 to 1861, because no one did not know what is the cause. There came with another scientist who was the student of Robert Koch, on Anton D. Barry. Anton D. Barry. So what he did is he conducted a simple experiment. Okay. So he used 2 pots, 2 containers, taking the 2 set of healthy potato plants. One was dusted with the fungus which was growing on the potato leaf from the field. That was dusted on a healthy plant. That was dusted on a healthy plant. Please make a note. And another one was not dusted with any the fungal growth that he collected from the field. The plants that was inoculated, this one, that is which I'm highlighting in the green, the plants inoculated showed the same kind of symptoms that was seen in the field condition. Whereas the uninoculated one, which was covered, did not had any kind of infection. Therefore, the fungus which was known as so-called as Oomycetes fungus was named as Phytophthora infestans. The name Phytophthora infestans. So why did he give the name is because to call this as an infectious plant destroyer. Infectious plant destroyer. That is why he gave the name as the Phytophthora infestans. Phyto is a plant. Phthora is a destruction. Phyto is a plant and Phthora is a destruction. And infestans refers to infectious. Refers to infectious. So the credit also goes, of course, Anthony D. Barry was the first, that is why he is called as the father of modern plant pathology. What is it? He is called as a father of modern plant pathology. The credit also goes to Louis Pasteur, who proved the theories while working with the bacteria. And during the same period of time, during 1861 to 63, the pasteurization and disproving the spontaneous generation theory, where Anthony D. Barry published his work with a late blight pathogen. Louis Pasteur with a animal bacteria, but Anthony D. Barry published the same kind of work where Louis Pasteur did, so he also published it in a. Thereby, he is called as a father of modern plant pathology. And this is called in a very generic as an Irish famine. That is the famine in Ireland due to the potato late blight disease, which is caused by Phytophthora infestans, was called as a Irish famine. So this is one of the examples how the plant disease can change the course of history. Because as I mentioned, the potato was the main staple diet, and the disease began in 1840s and became an epidemic in 1845. and destroyed the entire potato crop, which is led to a famine in Ireland. That is why it is called as a Irish famine. Because of which, please make a note out of this, that is due to which 8 million population was reduced to 4 million population. That is, there were around 8 million people in Ireland, which was reduced to 4 million population. And apart from this, there was a large migration of the population to other countries. It is reported that 6 million people were migrated between 1847 to 1854. So this is a large migration that happened just because of a disease. Nothing, no other wars or any kind of the political dramas. It is only due to the disease. One disease reduced the population, also led to the migration of a large number of population. And also another impact that has led to this particular disease is the change in the socio-political condition. Socio-political conditions where the government failed to manage the situation or the starvation, and thereby the entire the kingdom itself was destroyed. And that was the biggest impact, I can say, in the history. The large humankind was affected because of the potato crop and the disease caused to it. And so thereby it was one of the well-known historical importance, which is called as an very well known as an Irish famine. Okay. Likewise, another disease in case of wheat, which is called as a wheat rust. So it is one of the common disease in case of wheat, but which is also a serious problem in many of the Western countries. Even in India also now it is one of the biggest problems. This disease also has made the farmers to change the cropping pattern. This is one example where I can say that people started to change from growing the maize to, growing the wheat to maize and rye crop, just because of one disease that is called as the wheat rust disease. This is one example where you can really quote where a particular disease has made to change the cropping pattern. Okay. Another classical example is the Bengal famine. So this is during, especially in 1942, the last year of your Second World War, because the last year, 1942 was the last year. Especially this, because you know that this earlier we used to have a common Bangladesh and West Bengal regions, where predominantly it is the staple food is rice. So because of one particular disease that is called as the rice brown spot disease, rice brown spot disease, it is called as Helminthosporium oryzae, or it is also called as a Bipolaris oryzae. Bipolaris oryzae. It is also called as the Helminthosporium leaf spot, which is very similar to that of your Irish famine, but the level of catastrophe was not as that of in 1840s. No doubt, there were millions of people who died because of this particular disease in India in 1840s, 1842 in specific. There were thousands of people who died because of the starvation. And there are examples that people used to eat the stray dogs just because of the hunger, because of one disease, that is your brown spot, in rice or in paddy. Okay. This is where I can give you the classical examples of the starvation and the death, as well as changing the cropping pattern. There is one beautiful example that happened. It is called as Ceylon rust of coffee. The Ceylon rust of coffee, which happened during 1868 to 1867. Ceylon is basically the Sri Lankan city. In the middle of 19th century, that is where in between 1800s and late, where everyone likes coffee and tea. I see many of you people walk to the coffee and the tea, and this was a very favorite drink in at the time in England. Both coffee and tea are the most equally consumed by England or English people. And the major coffee producers at that time was Sri Lanka, India, and Malaysia. And at that point of time, the coffee was maximum coffee producing was from Sri Lanka. That was they had a larger area population. And all of a sudden, there was a disease called as the coffee rust or Ceylon rust. There was a disease called as a coffee rust, which attacked all the plantations by 1893. All the plantations were affected. And once if the disease attacked, almost where the Sri Lanka was the major exporter of the coffee to European countries, in specific to England. So the coffee export to Sri Lanka, to England, reduced by 93%. Just imagine, within span of 1 or 2 years, the export of coffee was reduced to 93%, where the entire population was dependent on coffee plantations. So here, one interesting thing that every Britishers or England people, they had an habit of drinking coffee at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock coffee. Everyone, even today, if you see, people have that habit of drinking the 11 o'clock coffee. And because of this, the export, once if the total export was reduced, the British people, which they had a habit of drinking coffee at 11 o'clock, which was called as 11 o'clock coffee. So they changed the habit to tea. They changed the habit to the tea. So now you can see that this is an example of a disease which changed the food habits. From 11 o'clock coffee, it became 11 o'clock tea. And the reason for this particular disease to appear in a very larger scale is the monoculture or monocropping. That is, the entire Sri Lankan region was completely covered by coffee, contributing to the factor that is Sri Lanka was the major producer, the conditions were so suitable, and all of a sudden the disease came and totally vanished. So any doubts or any clarification? If not, I will just take up another small story with respect to the same Ceylon rust. I gave an example of people starving. I gave an example of changing the cropping pattern. I gave the example of the number of deaths and they due to again starvation and change in the food habits, which I explained now. There was one example where a country suffered for more than 100 years. Country suffered for more than 100 years. That is due to, again, this coffee rust. How it is? I will give you the best example here. When Sri Lanka started to produce large coffee plantations in all across Sri Lanka during 1860 or 1865, so on, there was a huge, massive business of coffee. There, at that point of time, many people from India, especially Tamil Nadu, many of the people from Tamil Nadu, they migrated to Sri Lanka as laborers or the managers and so on. And they established their population, their families got into Sri Lanka. They were working in the plantations and they were very, very happy. When this disease appeared, when the plantations were totally removed, and when the production came down by 93%, all of them, they lost the jobs. All Tamil Nadu people who were settling in Sri Lanka, they lost their jobs. So either they cannot go back to Tamil Nadu or India, nor they were allowed to stay in the Sri Lankan province. So thereby, a terrorist group or an anti-social group which emerged, which is your LTTE, that is your Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. That is, those people who migrated to Sri Lanka, they settled with the families and their houses. When they lost their jobs, they could not go back, nor the local Sri Lankan people allowed them to stay in that Sri Lankan country because they were having that sovereignty. So there, the local, migrated people, they established a kind of organization which is called as a LTTE, that is Liberation Tigers of Tamil. So here, what does it indicate is not only the food habit change, starvation, death, it also had led to a kind of anti-social elements to the. This is again because if you trace back, it is only because of a disease, nothing else apart from this. If a coffee rust was not affected to coffee, so all the Tamilians who migrated to Sri Lanka, they would have happily survived and stayed in the Sri Lanka working as laborers, managers, and so on. So this is again one classical example where these are some stories, you will not get in textbooks. Definitely, these are not some of the things which you can get motivated. Coming to, again, back, I would like to talk about the wheat trust losses, some of the losses caused by, in India especially. I'm talking the context of India. So why I'm putting all this is whenever you're asked a question, what are the importance of plant diseases, you can define all these parameters. In India, with respect to the wheat rust, the losses due to the wheat rust alone is around 40 million annually. That is in terms of monetary, that is in terms of rupees. During the epidemics, when there is an epidemic in wheat rust, it is accounting to around 500 million. Sometimes it is more. So this is where, we will not be knowing why the diseases are so important. Now we are realizing, once we have seen the COVID, the coronavirus, it was there earlier also, but it was not in a so severe form. And after the introduction of the dwarf high-yielding varieties of wheat, even after that, the dwarf high-yielding varieties, the losses are accounting to 8 to 10% every year, even though they have the resistance. So still we can see that. That means the pathogens are very, very smart, like the coronavirus, where they are mutating. If you look into another disease that is called as a loose smut, the loose smut of wheat again, which is accounting for 3% every year. And this is accounting for 15 million rupees. Just imagine, 3%, 50 million. 50 million is how much? It's huge. Okay. And another disease, which is also important, which is called as the Molia disease, or it is also called as a cereal cyst nematode, which is caused by a cereal cyst nematode on wheat and barley. On wheat, it is around 40 million per year. And on barley, it is around 30 million per year. 30 million per year. Another disease on sorghum, smut. People coming from North Karnataka, I think they will be knowing about the sorghum. On the grains, you will see that there are black grains with the normal ones. You can see that there will be normal ones and a black powdery things. That is called as smut. So that is accounting for around 100 million per year. And especially in northern part of India as well as in Karnataka. In chickpea, there is a disease called as ascochyta blight of chickpea. So here, this disease alone is contributing to around 5 to up to 75%. And the pigeon pea wilt, which is again a very serious problem, which is accounting to 5 to 10%, especially because pigeon pea is very well grown in UP and as well as in several other countries. And often we see that in coffee, there is around 10% losses every year just because in coffee, especially one nematode disease that is called as the Prasanna coffee. Prasanna coffee. So 10% loss every year, it is accounting for around 20 million. And of course, there are every crop has more than 100 diseases, I can say. Huge losses have been seen mainly in potato, rice, wheat, apple, mango, banana. So there are several other diseases. And as I was mentioning about the plant disease affect the society in other ways also. As I was mentioning about the aflatoxin. The aflatoxin, many of the fungi, which causes, normally when it is consumed, it is known to cause the insanity, also causes the paralysis in many of them, stomach disorders, as well as the liver cancer. And also, so much of money has been spent on the management. If you can just imagine, it will be very huge. And for which the government has to import several of the commodities. For example, if there is a serious problem of wheat in India, we have to import from USA. So that is again one of the biggest challenges that we see with respect to the plant diseases. Okay? When we talk about the human and animal health, one of the important the disease seen is called as the ergotism, which is due to the plant diseases, which is affecting the human as well as the animal health also. So if you take back to the history, for the centuries, many people and animals, mainly in the Russian continent as well as in the Spain, they used to suffer from symptoms like reddening and the blisters. The blisters on humans and animals, both on the skin. If you see, they used to get these kind of symptoms and very well. And they used to get a lower abdominal muscle pains or shakings or the convulsion kind of things. If you see some of the old people, they basically having the shivering or the shaking behavior. And earlier, if you see, the gangrene was also a common problem. And many of them died without knowing it, why it was. So this disease was known as a devil's curse or a holy fire. This disease was called as a devil's curse or a holy fire. So because of the one at the time where the holy fire, one saint, he proposed a religious order. His name was called as Saint Anthony. As it was called as a Saint Anthony's fire. His name was Saint Anthony, and the problem was called as a Saint Anthony's fire. Okay, so there he proposed an order to not to consume or basically identifying this particular symptom at a very initial stage. So this is a Saint Anthony's fire, which was due to the ergotism by consumption of infected grains by the fungus or a disease. If you trace back a little bit earlier, the diseases were also mentioned in China in 11,000 BC. 11,000 BC. Okay, and there is another story in 1722. Almost around 20,000 soldiers. I think you might be knowing one of the great king in Russia. He was called as Peter the Great. Peter the Great. So he was a very strong emperor. He used to invade many countries. So for invading, he used to carry the wheat and the rye grains for feeding the soldiers as well as to feed the horses. So these grains, when they were infected by this the ergot or the ergotism or ergot infecting fungus, many of his soldiers and the horses were killed. So that's why they call it as, for want of a war, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horses was lost. And for want of the horses, the war was lost. The war was lost. This was a very classical statement, I can say, which was proposed at the time just because of a plant diseases which affected during that particular point of time. Okay? That is, the Peter the Great, who had an intention to invade in many of the situations where many of these soldiers died because of an infected grains, which was taken for the horses as well as for the soldiers. And it is believed that again, every time when he was invading, there was an loss of the farmers, because of which we can see that. That is why it is called for want of a war, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horses was lost. For want of a horses, the war was lost. So with this, I would break up now and continue in the next class. So do you have any questions for now? Any questions? If no questions, I will wind it up. I think we have one question. I'll just check it out. What is it?
Sir.
Insanity is something like, Kannada?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, insanity is basically like ಹುಚ್ಚರು ತರ ಆಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದಿರಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂಥರ ದೆವ್ವ ಬಂದಂಗೆ ಇನ್ಸೇನ್ ತರ ಹಾಡೋದು ಒಂಥರ ವಿಚಿತ್ರವಾಗಿ ಹಾಡೋದು. So that is called as insanity. Because when you consume some of the poisonous things, this happens normally. Earlier we used to not know. So in the villages, basically they say that he has got a devil, he has been cursed with the devil, and they behave like a mad people. So that is what is called as insanity, which is due to the consumption. Also, it happens. That is, it affects the brain. When it affects the brain, they will not have the consciousness properly. Okay, thank you. So if no questions, I will stop here, and we can have the questions in the later also whenever you want. Okay, take care, and happy Shankranti to all of you.
Okay? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, wish you same.
Thank you.